This video is a companion video to the video with Dr. Gura Bray and myself that we did on assembly theory. And in it, I'm just going to stick in a few things that didn't make the main video. So definitely go and watch that one first. And there's a couple other details that we're going to add in here. First up, we had talked in the previous assembly theory video about the LZ78 compression algorithm. And I sort of loosely said that the encoding that we had gotten, that it actually gives a compression. But why was that? So let's go and study exactly how that's going to work out and see an example of that. Okay, but let's see why for this algorithm that encoding is actually helpful, actually achieves a compression. So let x be a string. In general, I'm going to let c of x to be the number of components in its parsing. In our previous example, we saw that our string got broken up into 4 different components. So then my claim is going to be that the length of the encoding is given by this c of x, this number of components, times the log base 2 of c of x. So, okay, why is that true? So if you remember what my encodings look like, they look like things like this. And because I'm going to pretend to be a computer scientist for a moment, I'm going to do everything in base 2. Here I had written down a 2, which was saying go and look at the second location, but I want to do it in binary. So instead I'm going to write it as 1, 0. And indeed, 1, 0 in binary refers to 2. It's 2 to the 1 plus 2 to the 0. Okay, so how do I align with my c of x, log base 2 of c of x thing I'm trying to identify? Well, the first thing I notice is I have c of x pairs that are occurring here. So there's 4 pairs, my c of x is 4. But then I had to think about how much memory the inside of these pairs do. I'm going to ignore the new bit that's added, the 0 or 1. I'm just doing an approximation here. But what could get really long is the first component of every one of these pairs. And indeed, if my c of x was a large number, the question for how long those could get is how long does it take to write that big number in binary, which is the same thing as saying log base 2 of whatever your big number is. So at the end of the day, my encoding length is approximately c of x times log base 2 of c of x. Let's do one more example to lock in this encoding length. Here I'm going to do the string of all zeros again, so this is 2 to the k equal to n different zeros. So here's how I parse it and encode it. Basically what I'm thinking here is that I would start with a 0, always have to add a new bit. Then in the next slot, I say I copy the previous thing and add another 0. I copy the previous thing and add another 0. I copy the previous thing and add another 0. So this gives me my encoding in decimals. You can convert to binary if you wished. The way this basically has worked is that the number of zeros has to be, well, there's the first is 1, then 2, then 3, and then you keep on adding up until you get to, well, c of x. That's the number of steps that you need. A nice little formula for this, even when c of x is really large, right? This is the sum of I, from I is 1 all the way up to c of x. And we have the famous formula by Gauss that this is c of x times c of x plus 1 divided by 2. So again, just doing an approximation, ignoring the plus 1, this is c of x squared. If I rearrange that for c of x, I get this to be root 2n. And then, okay, let's plug it into my formula. Remember, my length of encoding was c of x log base 2 of c of x. Well, plug in my root 2n's here, and what do I get? I get this expression, and all that really matters here is that logarithm grows smaller than square root. So log base 2 of this 2n grows slower than the square root of 2n. 2's then finally cancel if you've been keeping track of them. And you get that this final result is less than n. Instead of just writing out n zeros, it takes less than n things to write out those n zeros. This encoding actually is a savings. And then the second topic that I had cut from the original assembly theory video is a discussion of something called context-free grammars. And this is particularly relevant if you're going and interested in reading some of the papers that are trying to rebut the original assembly theory paper. So here's our segment on context-free grammars. Now I want to show you a different way to interpret these assembly pathways. I've put up the one that we saw before for 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1. And what I want to note here is that there's really 6 different strings that are up here. x1 and x2 were just the basic starting building blocks, 0 and 1. x6 is my final string. And then we have a few of these intermediate ones, x3, x4, and x5. So one way to interpret an assembly pathway like this is through something called a context-free grammar. Here's how it works. First, the x1 and x2, those are just assigned to be basic things from the underlying alphabet, zeros and ones in this case. Maybe your alphabet has more symbols. We just have 2. But then I have a bunch of variables that are now assigned relative to previous variables. Like for example, x3 here is just the concatenation of x1 and x1. That is, if x1 is assigned to be 0, then x3 is going to be assigned to be 0, 0. Similarly, x4 is x2, x2, 2 different 1s in this case put beside each other. x5 is, well, what's it? It's going to be x4, x4, and then finally, what's x6? It's x3, x5. So basically, we have this list of rules, these are called production rules, of how you assign these different strings, these variables that we have. So this is called a context-free grammar. And basically, in a context-free grammar, you have some underlying alphabet, so in our case, it was 0s and 1s. And then you assign all of these variables to production rules. We saw, for example, x6 going to x3, x5, and so forth. And already, with context-free grammar, we're starting to shift our perspective into information theory, where our goal has now shifted to, if I have a string, how much can I compress that string down to store it in a small amount of memory as possible? For example, if a string has lots of repetition in it, then I'll be able to leverage that repetition to have a high amount of compression. But finding the smallest possible context-free grammar is actually a really computationally hard problem. Specifically, it's an NP-complete hard problem. If your string is long, it takes a really long time to figure out what is the minimal compression. And so if you're an information theorist and you want a practical algorithm to compress generic strings, then probably what you're going to do is focus on a specific compression algorithm that's going to be good in a large amount of cases. All right, I hope you enjoyed this random follow-up to my previous video. I kind of like the idea. I think I might do some more of those. I often have to cut things in the interest of packaging a tight video and don't get to put in all the details, but I might do more of these follow-up videos in the future. So I hope you enjoy. Definitely tell me in the comments if this is something I should do more of. Regardless, we'll see you for some more math in the next video.